No glory, no retirement, and a terrible dental plan. Welcome to the life of a pirate during the so-called Golden Age. If your knowledge of piracy comes from Disney films, prepare for a rude awakening sharper than a rusty cutlass to the backside. In 1717, when Captain Samuel Black Sam Bellamy's crew captured the slave ship Whydah, they didn't find chests overflowing with gold doubloons and sparkling jewels. Instead, they discovered what most pirates actually fought for. Practical items like cloth, sugar, indigo, and if they were exceptionally lucky, a modest amount of silver or gold. That's right, instead of financing a tropical island retirement, most pirates risked life and limb for fabric. Imagine dying for some linen. Avast! Hand over that cotton or face me blade. Life aboard a pirate vessel was less adventure on the high seas and more floating prison with scurvy. Take Lawrence Young, a reluctant pirate who joined Blackbeard's crew in 1717. As the newest addition, Lawrence was assigned the coveted position of bilge cleaner, which meant spending his days neck-deep in the fetid water that collected at the bottom of the ship, mixed with rat droppings, urine, and whatever else leaked from the decks above. Lawrence quickly earned the nickname Stinky Larry, a moniker that followed him well after his pirating days, all the way to his sad demise in a Charleston tavern when a woman refused his advances purely based on his lingering ode to bilge. But the freedom, I hear you cry. Yes, pirates did operate under surprisingly democratic principles. Most ships followed a code that allowed for voting, equal shares of plunder, and compensation for injuries. Lost your right hand? That's 600 pieces of 8. Lost your left hand? Only 500 pieces. Left-handed pirates were understandably outraged by this blatant discrimination. The articles of the pirate ship Queen Anne's Revenge specifically stated that crew members could vote on major decisions, except when Captain Edward Teach, Blackbeard, disagreed, at which point democracy mysteriously transformed into "shut up or I'll gut you with my cutlass." Speaking of captains, their tenure was typically shorter than a mayfly's lifespan. When Captain Lawrence patiently explained to his crew that they'd need to wait another week before dividing the spoils from their recent conquest, they responded by holding an impromptu election. The ballot options were, keep Lawrence as captain or feed Lawrence to the sharks bit by bit. The vote was unanimous, and Lawrence found himself unemployed and missing several toes before sundown. Disease was another charming aspect of pirate life. Forget dramatic sword fights. Most pirates met their maker through dysentery, malaria, or yellow fever. A pirate was far more likely to die explosively evacuating his bowels than in a glorious battle. And let's not forget scurvy, the disease that made your teeth fall out, your gums bleed, and old wounds reopen. Nothing says fearsome pirate like having to mash your food into a paste because all your teeth have abandoned ship. The average pirate vessel was about as spacious and comfortable as a modern-day broom closet. If that broom closet were perpetually damp, smelled like 40 unwashed men, and occasionally filled with seawater during storms. Pirates slept in shifts because there wasn't enough space for everyone to lie down simultaneously. The lucky ones got hammocks. The unlucky ones curled up wherever they could find space, often right next to someone with a contagious disease or chronic flatulence. Food on board was a culinary adventure in the worst possible sense. The ship's cook, often a one-eyed former pirate who couldn't fight anymore, prepared meals that would make prison food seem like fine dining. The main staple was hardtack, biscuits so dense they could crack teeth and so infested with weevils that they provided bonus protein. When fresh food ran out, which happened approximately 3 days into any voyage, it was nothing but salted meat with the consistency of boot leather, peas hard enough to use as musket balls, and water that had turned a suspicious shade of green. Pirate hygiene was virtually non-existent. Fresh water was reserved for drinking, not washing, so pirates typically bathed in seawater or not at all. The result was a collection of men whose stench could be detected from neighboring ships. This actually proved tactically advantageous when attacking merchant vessels. Victims often surrendered immediately rather than risk close-quarters combat with men who smelled like they'd died months ago. Sarah Vaughn, one of the few documented female pirates who disguised herself as a man named Samuel, wrote in her rarely cited diary, "The men think I'm odd for jumping into the sea weekly to cool off. Little do they know it's the only way I maintain my sanity among these walking cesspools. Her cover was nearly blown when fellow crew members became suspicious of her frequent bathing, as this was considered highly unusual behavior for a pirate. Contrary to popular belief, pirates rarely buried their treasure. This meant they had to carry their wealth around, not in convenient paper currency, but in heavy coins and cumbersome goods. One account tells of Lawrence Young's crew capturing a Spanish vessel carrying silver. Their celebration was short-lived when they realized they now had to transport several tons of metal on their already overcrowded ship. Half the crew slept standing up for the next month. When pirates weren't actively raiding, they were bored out of their skulls. Weeks or even months could pass between sightings of potential prey. To fill the time, pirates gambled, often losing their shares before they even received them, told the same 5 stories repeatedly, and engaged in the popular activity of trying not to get scurvy. Lawrence once recorded in his journal, "Day 47 without sight of land or sail." Rogers has told his tale of the Barbados barmaid 19 times now. "I dream of jumping overboard." Injuries were common and medical care was creative. The ship's surgeon was usually just the guy with the sharpest knife and steadiest hands during a hangover. Amputations were performed without anesthesia, though rum was provided both before and after if you were lucky. Wounds were cauterized with hot tar or seared with gunpowder, because nothing promotes healing like setting part of your body on fire. When a pirate did manage to survive long enough to retire, they often discovered their fortune barely covered the cost of a decent meal and a bed for a few months. Most ended up broke, drunk, or pressed into naval service, sometimes all 3. The few who truly struck it rich typically died before they could enjoy it, usually from diseases contracted during their pirating career or from celebrating too enthusiastically and falling face-first into the harbor. And let's not forget the ever-present threat of capture. If caught, pirates weren't given comfortable prison cells and fair trials. They were typically executed in spectacularly unpleasant ways, then had their bodies displayed publicly as a warning. Nothing says career planning failure quite like your tar-covered corpse hanging in a metal cage at a harbor entrance for years, picked clean by seagulls. The pirates' code stated that anyone showing cowardice in battle would be cut off from their share, and suffer such other punishment as the captain and the majority of the company shall think fit. This vague wording led to creative punishments, like when Lawrence's crew decided the appropriate consequence for one cowering pirate was to make him the designated parrot cleaner for a month. The ship had 17 parrots, all with digestive issues. When pirates captured a merchant ship, the crew often had to decide whether to incorporate the vessel into their fleet or scuttle it. This decision was typically made through logical debate and careful consideration of the facts. Just kidding. It usually devolved into drunken arguments ending with someone getting stabbed. Lawrence once noted that his crew spent 3 hours violently debating whether to keep a captured Portuguese ship, only to accidentally set it on fire during the discussion. Perhaps the most ironic aspect of pirate life was that these freedom-seeking rebels operated under stricter rules than many legitimate naval vessels. Pirate codes prohibited gambling on Sundays, fighting on board, and bringing women onto the ship. These rules were enforced with brutal punishments. Meanwhile, naval captains were getting their positions through family connections regardless of competence and treating their crews like disposable assets. In conclusion, the golden age of piracy was less about treasure chests and exotic adventures, and more about dysentery, starvation, and the constant threat of an ignominious death. Pirates traded one form of oppression for another, all while convincing themselves they were free. As Lawrence Young supposedly said before being hanged in 1720, "I spent my life chasing freedom on the seas, only to die in chains on land. Should have been a bloody accountant." The real treasure, it seems, was the infectious diseases they caught along the way.